Hello everyone. Just thought I'd do a little bit of a ramble as I do some painting today, as we have had the first results of a tournament outside of, Canada and the United States happen over the weekend. It was in Australia of all places, that down under spot. Anywho, so Goonhammer put out the lists, well not the list, but like the breakdown of the first place list and a couple of others, and it's kind of an exciting time. We're seeing armies that aren't exactly just regular everyday Space Marines. You're not seeing as many Ultramarines, Blood Angels, Iron Hands, all those boogeyman lists of last year. So we have in first place Death Guard, in second place Death Guard. Okay, we're seeing a bit of a trend here. In third place Harlequins, good for them, rocking that 8th edition codex. Something one of my friends highlighted was the fact that they were a auto-include in a soup Eldar list for the longest time, and now that we've got on to 9th, it's actually a pretty competitive list to just use on its own, as an army. So, and then we are back to Death Guard in 4th, and then that is it. Oh no, we got, So out of the top 5, 3 of the lists were Death Guard. So we're seeing a little bit of variation from what we were in the previous matchups, but it's not exactly as much diversity as I was hoping. I was hoping now that we have the Death Guard, the Necron, the Space Marine, and the where are they? And we just got the supplement for the Dark Angels, that we would see a bit of an improvement as far as diversity amongst the lists would go. But from what I understand, there was a list that was not using Mortarion. If you haven't been following along, Mortarion's looking pretty nasty these days. He's like kind of Gazgul and or Gazcool, however you want to say his last name. As far as list inclusion goes for army building with Death Guard, he's pretty similar to an auto include. And this takes me to the orcs that showed up for the tournament. If you go on to Down Under pairings, I think in 10th place there was your traditional orc list placement. There might be one higher up, but this was the first one that came to my mind, or that I noticed when I was looking over the lists from the event. And it's interesting. We are primarily seeing only one way of playing orcs competitively to place anywhere near the top right now, at least from the one event that we've seen. And that's Gazgul, with a bunch of boys and maybe a grot or two, still occasionally Death Skull patrol detachments, so you can get some deep striking OBSEC units either through Storm Boys with Zogoth or Commandos with Zogoth. And it just brings me to something I'd like to talk about, which is the Supreme Command detachments now. So in the previous edition, they were used to bring in super heavy auxiliary and stuff like that, so a Baneblade. But now what we're seeing is these large centerpiece models tend to be the HQ that goes into them. So Gaz hasn't been FAQ'd yet or updated yet to be only available through those, nor has he received the similar treatment that a lot of other armies have, which is if you're bringing a named character who's a Lord of War kind of concept, they usually have to take precedent as your warlord, or you can't take the biggest boss and stuff like that for stratagem support. So we have that aspect. We can't take a war boss in the same detachment as Gaz and make him the biggest boss, which makes sense because Gaz would just eat that guy, right? Anyway, so the thing I want to mainly discuss as I finish painting off this base for the Boomdak Snazwagon I got working on the table there, is we right now don't have the ability to guess what's going to happen, but I'd like to just hypothesize and say that I feel that our current orc list that we're seeing, which is the Goths boy spam with Gaz, and usually taking them as Scar boys, is not going to be long-term sustainable. And what does this mean for anyone who's coming into the hobby right now, or who's been building up their orcs over the lockdown, or any army really this could be applied to, is that you want to be able to have enough models in reserve that you've painted up and that are to a quality that you feel comfortable bringing them to events. And when you have an army that consists of 120 boys, it can be really discouraging when the codex comes out and say either the points of boys go up exponentially, or Gaz gets put into a detachment where it's going to make it hard to bring him from game to game. So what I'm trying to say is future-proofing your list. So if you've noticed anything in the background of the shots throughout my channel here, it seems that I'm pretty heavy into buggies, which is true. which fits, though, with the concept that I run, which is like a speed freak. I'm going to try and use Evil Suns more and more. That's kind of who I'm leaning towards, because I just love the movement boost, and I think it's really effective. And I think the release of the Dark Angels was a good indication of what we could maybe expect from Games Workshop, which is if your HQ is included in, or sorry, if your Warlord HQ is included in any detachment like an Outrider, that might refund those CPs. So there's a chance that we might see, say, a Def Kill War Trike list with a bunch of bikes, if bikes ever get the love that they need, the War Bikers, and drop down in points, because 27 is quite scary when you think about it. As far as the requirements, seeing as they're only T5 and 2 wounds with a 4-up armor save. I guess they really value the movement that they have, but apart from that, since everything has heavy bolters now in the meta, and if you run into a 1-guard list, you're kind of screwed through and through. So it's just interesting. I think it's what we're seeing is people are building their lists in a way that they're focusing on 120 boys, which is a big investment as far as time goes to paint up and get ready, and even on the financial aspect. And so what I'm just going to try and say is, at the end of this video, if you take away one thing, apart from me being inconsistent, incoherent, and rambling like a madman, is just to make sure that you have enough models in your reserve pile of stuff that you've done over time. So that way, when the codex comes, because there was some leak stuff, we will probably be getting ours sooner rather than later, is that you have enough models that you can fall back on and make new lists when Games Workshop inevitably makes big changes. So to that point, it's just making sure you have a diverse range of models. So for instance, right now I've got 9 War Bikers in reserves in case they get some love, so I can start fielding smaller squads of those. I have the Def Kill War Trike, who's been debuted on the channel a few times for like tips and tricks on how to do basing. I think I've used them as an example for the static grass. And also several buggies. But then I also, like I was doing for the video last week, or this week actually, no, sorry, yeah, last week, was 40k goals where we painted up the 10 shooter boys. And it's just kind of diversifying your workbench, making sure that the models that you're getting done on a regular basis are consistently going to be something that has a potential to make it onto the tabletop. And if there's any player who kind of embodies this the most, it would be actually a Canadian guy by the name of Skari. You can find him on YouTube at Scarcast, S-K-A-R-I cast, C-A-S-T. And he also has a Patreon, a bunch of stuff like that. He's a competitive player. And he has been playing Dark Eldar since like the dawn of time. I think like 2nd or 3rd. And since then, he's been able to build up a pretty big collection. So no matter what the changes come to the codex over time, he's been able to adapt and change, and his army is kind of more or less always ready to go because he can take whatever he wants from the new codex and pretty much field it. And this is, it's kind of building some redundancy and some resistance to your lists, which is also something that you can see with like points changes through the field manual and like the FAQs and stuff like that. Whenever you have a slight points change, it can make a unit go from being unviable to very viable. So we're seeing that right now with Dark Eldar players and racks. A lot of guys don't have a ton of racks on reserve that they've painted up over time. But now the racks are good. People are scrambling to get them done, right? Because they're a good model. So, but they're a basic troop, so you think you would have at least 30 done, you'd hope. So the moral of the story and the end of this conversation for today is just make sure when you're making those models, when you're painting stuff up, that you're making sure to sneak in the occasional troop in between vehicles and the occasional elite between all your troops, and take that time to paint up a character. Even if you don't think they're going to get tabletop play often, paint them up because you like the model, or because you want to try something new, or because, hey, who knows, one day that model might actually be worth bringing. When it comes to the Def Kill War Trike, I could foresee him in the Codex getting access to a Relic Snag-a-Claw or a Relic Trike. I know they're moving away from the Vigilus detachments, but there used to be an ability to take a pretty solid upgrade, which could, with combination of a certain Warlord trait, make him T8, which is pretty solid in close combat, a T8 buggy. But it's just making sure that your army has some redundancy built into it, making sure that your collection has enough diversity in models so that you're not screwed when the meta changes. So this has kind of been a long drawn out ramble, and I've been doing a little bit of work in the background. I'm now working on one of the grots I showed earlier. He was done, first painted up when I was like in grade 6, I think, at the Multiverse, which doesn't exist anymore. And this was kind of the first orc that I ever really painted. Anyway, so now I'm going back and I'm touching them up. Don't worry, took before and after shots, so when we finish up this week's goals, hopefully I'll be able to snag those in through editing, and you can get an idea of what how my painting has progressed over time. This is too big of a brush, and this paint is too watered down. Anyway, so this has kind of just been a ramble as I paint, and let me know if you like these kinds of things. I can start doing them more and more, or not if the response isn't very high. But the last thing I wanted to mention during this conversation here is that there has been leaks of potential orc codexes coming down the line. So what we're seeing is when Games Workshop gets close to releasing a codex, what they've been doing is releasing these like commemorative coin things. Now, I'm not a huge like fanboy as far as the collectible aspect goes. I always think, hey, if that's going to cost like $50, you might as well buy another model for that rather than giving your money away for something that either goes on the wall or in a drawer. Anyway, so one of these tokens turned out to be an orc one, and it got misshipped. So what it is it's that traditional like bull orc skull with the 2 horns on either side. And I think it was supposed to be a Slanesh Demons one for Age of Sigmar. So we might be seeing a codex sooner rather than later. That means these kind of commemorative coins are in distribution. So there's a potential case for a codex in the near future. However, that being said, there has been rumors that the next codexes we will see are pertaining to T3, which would make sense. We know for a fact that Dark Eldar have a codex coming out. I think it makes sense that if you're releasing Dark Eldar, that you're releasing Craftworld Eldar and Ynnari, if they actually get a codex or if they become retconned, who knows what will happen with them. Cool models. And then also Harlequins. So my guess is since Dark Eldar are coming, we'll probably see the 2 other main Eldar forces through Harlequins and Craftworlds. And then we will probably see if they continue the T3 route, maybe Genestealer or Cult, Tyranids. They got to mix an Imperial army in there, so maybe Guard. But Guard are like the abused stepchild. No one really knows what's going on with them. And yeah, so hopefully here soon we'll be able to see some changes as far as what's going on. And the exciting thing is, while COVID's been an absolute pain in the butt for the hobby overall, it's kind of been a good reset, I feel like, because what's happening is a lot of these codexes are getting released, not much play testing, not much, well, maybe there is a lot of play testing, but we don't hear about that. Not much experience in the community is being used on them because no one can play in major events, right? And major events are where we get the statistics to figure out what the meta is shaping up to, as well as also like what people in your local area, because everyone knows we're not traveling these days, brings to the table. So, for instance, if you had no like Death Guard, Space Marines, or Necron players in your community, which is probably pretty rare, seeing as the start collecting for 9th edition was a Necron and Space Marine box, and almost everybody and their mums brings Space Marines to the table at least once in their lifetime. So, yeah, at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to what's in your community, but these events like the one that just finished up in Australia that we started off talking about is a good indication of potential things to see. And while COVID's not a great thing, it is allowing for a lot of codexes to be released without much community play. So the exciting thing is, if and when, at the end of 2021 maybe, or at the beginning of 2022, well, 9th edition has still technically been out for a long time, it will have really not had much tabletop play, especially at competitive events. We'll see a lot of shifts in the meta fast, you know? It's not like we're having one codex release, the community is scrutinizing it like crazy, seeing what's really good, seeing what's not a great combination, and optimizing as fast as they can in order to bring it to the top table, because, let's face it, there's not enough events for that to actually matter this year, and people can't exactly experiment and practice if they're not getting consistently numerous events, right? So, yeah, to take it to a personal note, the last actual game of Warhammer I got to play was out in Halifax. It was at a store called HFX Games over in the Dartmouth side on Portland Street. And it was organized by our local scene there. And it was the last time I got to play. It was, I think, a 3-round RTT. Didn't do very well because I brought a really goofy list which revolved around 18 Volgren because I love Ogryn. I love the fluff around them. And heck, I thought, why not? Everyone who plays Imperial Guard at the time was bringing 9 Volgren to hold the middle of the table. They were getting destroyed in the ITC from gangbusters. But heck, why don't we just like really push into it? So if my opponent doesn't have any opportunity to actually be able to remove 1 squad of 9, 2 squads of 9, is going to be even worse. And it was also fun just to kind of show up to the table, pull out the 18 Volgren, and people would freak out and be like, "Oh my god, that's so bad!" And it's like, well, you can either deal with them or you can't. They're pretty slow. They were and fun to use, and they're just big chunky models. I used the Age of Sigmar ogres, the just like base end Maw tribe guys, and mixed them in with the that kind of newish Ogryn model kit that came out a while back. And so did some head swaps and mixed everything together. They turned out pretty well. I liked the result. I might do a spotlight on them in the future. They were kind of like my first models I started experimenting contrasts on because they have a lot of open fleshy areas. And the results were pretty solid. And the results for the tournament, though, were absolutely horrendous. But it was so early in 9th edition, in 2019, that I think I was like 14th in Canada for a short stint, even though I went like 1 and 2. I lost 2 of the games. But it was pretty fun. It was a good time, and that was the last time I got to play Warhammer. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to return to a more normal amount of games, like going from none to at least 1 a month would be solid. But it all depends on what the local restrictions are. So, I'm based out of Ontario here. Doug Ford's our premier. For those who are not Canadian viewers, there's a lot of you. Premiers are like, I guess, kind of like a mayor, but for the entire province or state, technically. So I guess like state representatives. Sorry, I don't know American politics very well. But yeah, so he came out the other day, talked about eating egg sandwiches, because he's a glutton, I guess. Oh, maybe he's an ogre. Anyway, so he talked about egg sandwiches and how he's going to try and lift some of the stuff. Well, we have a bunch of variants freaking out and running around, so that's great. So hopefully the benefits of this, well, numbers will probably go up again, is that I'll get to play some Warhammer, just be really selfish and hope for the best. But I'm itching to get some games playing. I've got, I think I've got almost 1,500 points painted since COVID started back in March. And it took me a while to get all my orcs kind of all centralized. I moved halfway across the country. Midway through COVID, kind of was in that limbo position, didn't know what was going on. Been working off and on, just doing weird stuff to make some cash here and there and painted models. It became a good form of release. Not to mention, I also discovered that I'm an actually okay painter. And at this time, I would like to just address the fact that I, by no stretch of the imagination, am a Golden Demon like level painter for Warhammer. So please, for the love of God, don't take everything I say as gospel. There's far better painters out there than me. For instance, if you want a really good demon painter, look up Nurgle Schnurgle on Instagram. Her stuff is awesome. And I think she's actually one of the top-rated demon players in the world right now. But yeah, so in addition to being really tactically minded, she's a great painter, which is a great combination. Anyway, so that's kind of what we're doing here today. Just rambling while I put some paint on stuff. And yeah. So, I don't know. Let's talk about some people who do the Warhammer hobby on YouTube. So there's some smaller, lesser-known people who produce. So Skari, for instance, he's just starting to get up in the subscriber numbers. But then there's also guys like Ash with Guerrilla Miniature Gaming, GMG, I think. He used to work for Mini War Gaming for a short stint, I think, and now has his own independent group, or I think it's just him. And he's actually, he's a really good content producer. He's been in the hobby forever. I think he used to work for Games Workshop, from what I can decipher from his conversations in the background as he narrates his videos. But he's got a good perspective because he's one of those guys, once again, who, since he's been playing for so long, he's got a large model collection that he can, like, call upon as things change. And he's also seen it all. I think he was a competitive player for a short stint, maybe back in, like, the 90s, before I was probably even born, when Games Workshop was just in its infant stages. Anyway, so yeah, so he's another good one to look out for. So that's Scarcast, Guerrilla Miniature Games. If you're not into the competitive gaming, another good, I seem to be listing mostly Canadians here, YouTube channel to look out for is Mini War Gaming. They're great for just putting out content. They're constantly putting stuff out. I think they're at like 1 video a week or 2 or 3. Like, they're pretty consistent. Once again, not overly competitive. Usually good-looking armies, although I'm guessing that a lot of their stuff came second-hand painted and they never changed it, because like back in the day when they'd show a guard army, it would be really mishmash. The paint scheme wouldn't match. And someone like me who likes to look at a really pretty army across the table, that's kind of a dissuading factor. Another channel to look out for would be, who can I think of right now? Ooh, Winter SEO. So he's a British bloke, and he, I think he's British, something with the UK kind of sound and accent. He's been doing content production. He's been putting out really good videos. His tables are gorgeous. And I think he just put up a video recently of all the models that he's gotten done recently, whether that's through contracting a painter to do the work for him, or stuff that he's done on the side. And it was really good to kind of see his stuff. I'm kind of trying to base my own schedule off of him. I think he does like a video once a week. I'm trying to do at least 2 this week. You're going to get 4 with this one, plus the 2 I'm dropping this afternoon, which are the last of the original setup kind of painting tips, which I discuss the sealant that I use, which is Rust-Oleum, not sponsored. I use it because it's cheap. You can get it off of pretty much any big box store who sells spray paint. And it's cheap. It's cheap as dirt. Anyway, and then the other one is how to build some industrial terrain. So that's exciting. Actually, I don't even know what time it is. But that video might be out by now, if it's 12 o'clock. I usually drop the workbench Wednesdays at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time to get kind of a consistent release schedule. Now, I originally was going to hold back the industrial terrain video until next week, but, you know, I got excited about it. I think the project turned out pretty well. And then, so what I ended up doing was deciding to just, hey, let's put it out this week, because let's try and flush out all the older content videos. I think there was 3 of them with the prior filmed situation. And now we're on to this new setup with the studio table. I got to figure out, I don't know if it's been doing it much during this video, but I've got a bit of rock from the table when the camera's filming. So my next game plan is trying to figure out how to stabilize the tripod a little bit more. Anyway, kind of running out of stuff to say, so yeah. So Winter SEO. Don't know how I got off topic with him. Oh yeah, I was discussing his release schedule. He's a good one to look out for. And then, so I don't know any of these people. I am not affiliated with any of them. I think I've maybe direct messaged one of them once, maybe twice, just to get some like tips on stuff. So if it comes out that they're like crazy, or if you've had a bad experience with them, my apologies. No clue who they are. Just recommending their channels for content that they produce. And yeah, so that's kind of it for today. I've got the base more or less done here. This was done like the original video, which is using texture paints, the Agrax Dust. Don't get dunes. I've done that once before where I bought the wrong granular size texture paint. Washed with Agrax, and then what I've been doing to improve the quality of the dry brush is I've started using Carax Stone as the first dry brush layer, which is kind of almost a gray beige mix. And then I do an even lighter dry brush with Ushabti Bone, right? So that gives you this kind of textured effect with a little bit of highlights here and there on the tips of the stone and the gravel. So that's the base for the custom Boosta Blasta. Boomdax Snazwagon. Gosh darn it, I'm constantly mixing up the names. And this afternoon I'm going to do my favorite, not really, which is finish painting up the tires for the vehicle. That's the only thing that I'm doing slightly different between the regular kit and this one. Is I'm going to be using 4 of these wheels. These are usually only the front tires. So he's not going to have the usual like kind of buggy lifted back end and lower front end. He's going to have the same wheels on both sides, so it'll be pretty flush to the ground. I got the driver done. These kits are really bad for having a lot of stuff that you have to paint in batches. So I've got the driver's torso done there. I got his head over here. Still got to do the teeth and the glasses on him. Got to do the band on this guy's arm, plus give him a dry brush to get the metallics on there. I've got the Molotov cocktail hand. I might refrain from painting the cocktail until after. I got the first layer of Magos purple on there for the bottle. And the fire effect, which can be achieved really easily with contrast. So I've got a couple more things on the paint table here. You know, we're only halfway through. It's Wednesday today. Hopefully I'll get the tires done today. Can get the tires on here. Get the driver tucked in there. He's got to do this weird parkour thing where he gets... his seat sits here, but he goes through the window and then rotates while he sits on the seat to like glue him into place. So that's why I don't have the head or any of the arms on, because he's kind of a pain in the butt to shove in there. Actually, here, I'll grab the other Boomdax Snaz wagon to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. In case you haven't seen this model much. Here's the stripped down version, which is actually a great example of looking into the interior of the vehicle. Because traditionally there's a roof that goes over the top here, so you wouldn't even see this part of him really. But you can see he's tucked inside the door and he comes out. So if you glue this arm on beforehand, he doesn't actually fit at all. And the way they've set it up is, God, I would not want to try and like paint his back, which you can't even see right now from your perspective probably, through the hatch here between the gun, the seat, and then into the model. That would be just a pain in the butt. So you got to do them in stages and parts. Oh, I guess the other thing that I've done differently is, so that's the traditional head on the driver there. I don't know what they're doing. The Orc heads are seeming smaller with the newer models for the Orcs. So I'm doing a head swap. This is, I think, one from the Storm Boys. Yeah, the Storm Boys. And so I'm going to do a head swap on there. He's got the open mouth, goggles, you know, kind of looks Mad Maxy. And then, yeah, I must have an affinity for heads from the Storm Boys because the gunner on this one is a Storm Boy head as well. So that one's stripped down. Oh, and he's actually, it's the third time I'll say oh and pick up this model. He's actually got the 2 back tires. So these are traditionally the back tires. I put all 4 on this guy because I wanted him to look even more kind of dune buggy-like. Yeah, so he's getting there. There's one little grass tuff because I'm lazy when it comes to basing, I guess. Anyway, so this afternoon I hope to have the driver put in there and all built up, and hopefully I'll have at least this grot done. I'll post some follow-up pics on my Instagram. You can follow me along. I'm on tman2902 at Instagram. I usually post stories and images of what I've been working on throughout the week. Some form of shameless self-promotion. Anyway, so hopefully we'll have that done this week. We'll get this all finished up, the buggy and the remainder of the grots from my first squad of Gretchen that I did. I can't find all of them, so as you do with like the little based guys, you'll lose them quite a bit, especially when they're this size. Actually, that is encouraging me to make one more comment before I end this video out. So going back to the prior discussion about the importance of a diverse list. So we're going to be seeing that, I think, as well with the Guard. Right now with Death Guard, you can only take, I think it's 10 Poxwalk. You can take 1 squad of Poxwalkers for every keyword Death Guard Astartes, I think it is. So I think they're going to apply a similar practice with the Orcs. Because right now, Gretchen serve no role. They're 5 points model. They're really expensive. They're the same price as a Guardsman for only toughness 2 with a 6-up armor save. And terrible leadership at leadership 4. And no ballistic skill or weapon skill at all to really speak about. Well, actually, their ballistic skill is their best part. But it's on a 12-inch pistol. So good luck getting 30 of those in range. without losing them to morale. And so what I want to mention is I think what we're going to see with this edition in particular is the Gretchen will probably be required to be taken with boys. So once again, if you're someone who fields like 150 Gretchen and a bunch of like, what are they, the mech guns, we probably are going to see a decline in that, especially as they try and get rid of like spam lists. So if they make it so units with the Gretchen key tag or keyword have to be included with boys or models that have boys, then you'll probably see the kind of the eradication of Gretchen in lists, which is unfortunate because I'm working on a theory right now that while they are expensive for what you get, the profile, so the shape, the size, the silhouette that they produce is their biggest benefit. So right now with 9th, we're seeing that objective holding is huge, and being able to utilize terrain is a massive part of the game, which is fantastic. It makes you have to, like kind of chess player, think about your turns in advance. So one of the things I want to just suggest is everyone's down on the grots right now, and I am too for the most part. But they're the cheapest models, I think, to collect right now at like $25 Canadian, and you get 10 of them. So $25 a squad compared to, I think, 40 for a 10 or 11 model kit of boys. They run in at 50 points instead of 80 compared to just a bare bones orc boys squad. So if you're not upgrading a knob to carry a claw or a special weapon. But the biggest thing is, once again, the size of the model. Because I believe that Gretchen fill a role where they can actually fit behind a lot of things or within area terrain that would typically not be used by a lot of models, right? Because of their size. Their size is just considerably smaller, which makes sense. They're on a smaller base compared to a boy on a 32. So I think that's something that's being overlooked by orc players right now a lot, is the fact that they don't use them for holding backfield objectives out of line of sight. There's one YouTuber, I think it's Dangling Boyz. He's another orc YouTube player. So he's been running, I believe, buggy lists, and his troop choices that he's been bringing are the grots, which I think is smart because people are going to be so focused on the buggies, kind of having that boogeyman glass cannon like turn one. You got to get rid of all the buggies you can because they can do a lot of damage in a short stint. And he brought grots. Now, I don't think they lasted throughout the entire game, but I think they're a great starting point for an army because, once again, they've got such a small footprint and silhouette that they can hide behind virtually anything, and especially blocking them with your own models. So this is something I've been thinking about with the Boomdaka Snazwagon, which serves no role in an orc army because it's only got 9 shots, strength 5, AP -2, 1 damage. So it's pretty much useless, except for the fact that it's a huge base, like this one here. And I think that's going to be their kind of saving grace, is the fact that they're such a large base, they can, one, block areas. So say you had like 2 pieces of terrain on either side. They're pretty good at blocking stuff because units can't come within, what is it, an inch or a half an inch of them? Inch. So they can be used to like block off corridors. But also, if you don't strip them down like I did, if you leave that honking bumper on there, they can be used pretty well, I think, to like screen models. Going back to the idea that if your opponent can't see them, they can't shoot them, right? So if Gretchen are hiding behind all your buggies or behind anything that's line of sight blocking, it's beneficial at the end of the day because what can't be seen can't be shot, right? Unless they have line of sight ignoring weapons, but we really don't see thunder cannons too much right now because, once again, we haven't really had much of a meta-analysis. Guard Wyvern tanks are borderline useless. Strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. So I put a huge volume, which is threatening to like an orc boy. But against Gretchen, it's kind of a waste if they fire, what is it, 120-point model, I think, into a 50-point squad of Gretchen. Especially if that Gretchen aren't doing anything. The other thought I had about Gretchen is potentially using them in a truck list combo or even in battle wagons. So say you're running 2 battle wagons. For an additional 100 points, you can put 2 10-man squads of grots, 1 in each battle wagon. So if you're running the Fortress on either like a Bonebreaker or any battle wagon that's getting up into their deployment zone, or just applying pressure. Once they destroy it, like, it's applying pressure just by being such a large presence on the battlefield and being a scary kind of machine of death. But the bigger threat is actually the grots at the end of the day. Because say they spend all that time blowing through the 14 wounds, especially if it's a fortress with a 3-up armor save, I think a 4-up invuln, the Gretchen then pop out. And then they can disembark 3 inches away. And they're so gosh darn small that say their plan is to shoot the Gretchen inside once that vehicle is destroyed. If they pop out 3 inches away and you've planned that accordingly, they can pop out on the other side of a wall, out of line of sight, or even onto an objective. And they are they OBSEC? Yeah, they're OBSEC still, which is hilarious because they're like literally the smallest, crappiest unit in the game. Anyway, so that's been me rambling. I've been just chatting here now, and I think I should be cutting it because that's kind of everything I wanted to get off my chest this morning. Is I did some painting. I think this is now dry, so yeah, that's looking good. So yeah. So let me know down in the comments below if this is something you want to see me continue to do. Your silence will be assumed to be a yes, and I have free time these days, so I'll just continue to produce content as much as I can for the channel. So follow along on Instagram. I'll post some update video or images as far as the progress that we've put on the custom Boosta Blasta. Oh God, why do I keep saying that? It's because it's my favorite buggy, right? The custom Boosta Blasta. I think it fills a better role than the Boom Daka. So follow along on Instagram. I'll be posting images there of the progress that I get done today. And then also find us on Facebook at the Gaming Co-op. Make sure you put that dash between co and op. And then we'll be seeing you later on this afternoon for more Workbench Wednesdays.